Fallout 76, the latest installment in the Fallout franchise and by far the most controversial as it takes the game into a brand new direction: multiplayer. Fallout 76 is an open-world multiplayer survival title with some role-playing flavor to spice things up, and I have spent a long time pondering over the strengths and weaknesses of this game. Certainly it's different to what we've had before, but does different make for a good title? Well, here are my thoughts on the game after approximately 25 to 30 hours of game time. Rolling around the wasteland with a crew of friends is certainly enjoyable in Fallout 76, but then again, with the right friends, even watching paint dry can be amusing. Fallout 76's new photo mode might as well be the best new feature, and I'm only partially exaggerating. The world of West Virginia is easily the biggest step in the right direction that Fallout 76 makes. Its new, varied biomes, from lush forests to more classical wasteland areas and smoke-filled mountaintops, make for quite an intriguing exploration experience. Add to this a much more varied array of enemy types with interesting designs, from the big flesh Grafton monster to the flying, sonic bombarding scorched beast, or even the new basic robotic enemies, and you'll likely find some fun surprises in this new Fallout setting. I can then truly see some strong environmental and game design choices they've made with Fallout 76, but most of these sadly get massively overshadowed by its numerous pitfalls. For one, I played all of this on the PC version of the game, meaning I can't speak to the performance of the console versions, but Fallout 76 feels like a rather poor console port. They've made steps to improve this performance, but it doesn't take away from the fact that it's clearly not designed with PC in mind, as is evident from the horrendous menu management, especially during building. Add to this a limited frame rate of 63, because the engine still has frame rate tied to its physics, a forced depth of field and field of view, a possible solution to which I'll post in the description below, but from personal experience, it would still reset every time I fast traveled. And that's not to even mention the lack of text-based chat or no push-to-talk option for the voiced version. Credit where credit's due though, the loading times are extremely short and seamless. Which I suppose brings me back to the crux of this title, the multiplayer. Frankly, it felt pointless. Interaction with other players is half-baked at best through emotes, which, although amusing at first, are an annoying form of communication. More worryingly than that, however, is that player interaction felt utterly useless. Essentially, every mechanic they've added is controversial to some extent and highly subjective, and PvP is a prime example of this. PvP has always been subjective. Some people like myself enjoy the tension and more competitive gameplay it can bring on, and others, rightfully, don't ever want to be harassed by someone else in a survival game. Bethesda's solution to this, however, is yet again half-baked. Whereas in ages past we would have had a server lobby system to select those with or without PvP, Bethesda seems content to add an awkward handshake system in Fallout 76. The way it works is that the first person that engages another does absolutely pathetic damage with their shots, and will continue to do so until the other person fires or hits back. Providing you do end up killing one another, you will now trigger a revenge system, regardless of the fact if you were the instigator or not, and as this revenge system will keep daisy chaining back and forth between you, the end result is really a lose-lose scenario in which neither of you have gained anything and both of you have lost a lot. I don't want to linger on the system for too long, for it's clearly an afterthought and likely one most of us will end up ignoring, but suffice to say it's one of the player interaction systems that has felt absolutely pointless while playing. Furthermore, the actual amount of players in this game is too low to ever really be a present element in your playtime. It was extremely rare to actually find another player, but when it did, it never really prompted much of an interesting experience. Add to this that every player is always visible on the map and you're never surprised by their presence either. No, for a multiplayer title, the enjoyment does not seem to come from spontaneous grouping or interaction. In fact, I'd say it's only really enjoyable if you have a constant group of friends to play with, and notably I found Fallout 76 a lot more enticing when I was streaming this and was able to share the crazy stories of my marsupial mutant compared to the immensely lone experience of wandering the wasteland on your own. Lonely, and yet it fails to create elements of tension to make that compelling. Taking a step back, Fallout 76 begins, as expected, inside a vault. However, immediately it displays a prime problem with its narrative design. The game has been limited to one vector of storytelling: audio logs. Fallout 76 doesn't feature any human NPCs, and the few you do find are generally robotic characters you won't interact too much with. meaning this iconic experience of being met with an interesting vault setting and thrown into the wasteland which immediately clashes with the pristine that came before is no longer present. At most, you'll spend a minute checking out the balloons of the vault as you'll pass through onto a loading screen into the open world. After this loading screen, you'll start an extremely dull journey of collecting audio log after audio log, and without a doubt, Fallout 76's initial impressions are very boring as a result. Now, audio logs are possibly my least favorite form of storytelling to begin with, but it has an interesting conflict in a multiplayer title. Chances are you'll be playing this with a few friends, resulting in all of you talking over the audio logs as you find them at different points in time, and you can't pause them either, making it a very confusing experience at best. If you are playing this solo, you'll find that the story as a result is neither compelling nor surprising, as every mission that starts with "find X person" is obviously going to result in you finding either another robot, a corpse, or more likely than not, another audio log. The concept of every human interaction being another player simply does not work for the narrative of the game. Adding on to this, I mentioned that enemy design is quite interesting in Fallout 76, and it truly is. Curiously, the new feral ghouls, or Scorched, in Fallout 76 are set in a time period in which they are relatively new, meaning in Fallout 76 you'll find them wearing clothes reminding you of the people they once were. However, beyond this initial disturbing recognition, they show no human emotion or behavior. They don't really talk, they don't perform any activities, and as a result, with every enemy being either a robot or a monster, it creates a very soulless existence. No, the narrative doesn't quite do it either, and sadly the quests you're given feel more like random busy work than quests with actual purpose. And this really brings me to the actual crux of this title: grinding. Fallout 76 is all about grinding. Grinding food, grinding water, grinding building materials, of course grinding gear, and most importantly, grinding levels. And this grinding is truly prevalent in every element of the game. From the basic quest design to the constantly respawning enemies, they will respawn all the time, especially if your friends stagger into the building you're in one by one, meaning the enemies get a fresh reset every single time. And this grinding element really amplifies the already boring start of Fallout 76. If you build or find a weapon or armor crafting table, chances are you can't actually do anything with it, because you first need to grind weapons to salvage for blueprints or find them randomly out in the world. If you find a neat weapon that seems interesting to you, chances are you're 10 to 20 levels too low to actually use it. If you find you get over encumbered all the time or run out of food and water too quick, chances are you just need to level up to get more of the perks to lower these problems. And if that sounds fun to you, then great, because the best parts of Fallout 76 are all locked behind this grind. Loot is by far the most intriguing element of the game, but you won't see that until you're at least level 15 to 20. Fallout 76 truly has a nice, varied weapon design, and I found it very enjoyable to see my build get better and better at using pipe rifles of all weapons, but this was a very incremental and slow process. For the first numerous hours, you're likely limited to some very dull weaponry that you can't yet customize. Another good element of the loot design is that cosmetic armor now weighs almost next to nothing, meaning if you like to play fashion Fallout, you can definitely carry around as much of those as you wish. Now, I said I ultimately ended up focusing on a pipe rifle build, and this required a number of different perks, which are now granted through perk cards that are somewhat random as you level up. These perk cards all link to one of your special attributes, from strength to charisma and luck, and as you level up you'll find there is a certain degree of specialization involved that can create an interesting interaction when playing with friends, as they might not need certain ammunition or certain weapon types. In addition, you can easily change these perks whenever you wish, meaning cards like hacking don't feel like a waste of combat power, as you can simply unequip them for something better until you need them, and this yet again allows for some better group coordination. But probably the most fun I've had with my wonky build was the surprise at finding out my character had mutated. Mutated into a marsupial being, to be exact. Unfortunately, these mutations aren't visual in any way, but their gameplay impact can be quite immense. A lot of them are rather forgettable, but the marsupial one, for instance, allowed me to jump much higher than before, much to the envy of my friends, as this essentially gave me a pseudo jetpack to literally reach heights I couldn't reach before with. And although Fallout 76 is certainly not the best shooter or hack-and-slash title, as the audio and visual feedback is poor to say the least, I found this combination of custom weaponry, perk improvements, and mutations resulted in enjoyable combat at its core. On that note, VATS is now an auto-aim system, which at longer ranges sadly felt very underwhelming and no longer had that visceral impact as it had in previous titles, but instead relegated itself to being a get-out-of-jail instant hit in melee range with clunkier long-range weaponry. Either that or you used it for melee weapons to get a very useful charge attack in. Sadly, what then ruins this combat for me, and also ruins the intriguing monster design, is that the AI of these enemies is very lacking. Adding on to this are the lack of consequences to dying, and every enemy felt lackluster to fight in the end. At the beginning of the game, yet again compounding the boring start, you'll find that nothing can really hurt or harm you as you'll kill them in 1 or 2 hits. And as you progress further, enemies start outscaling your own levels, resulting in them becoming bullet sponges that can now actually harm you. That is, unless you simply walk around some objects. Unfortunately, the AI of Fallout 76 can't at all deal with the box or slight elevation, meaning even the dreaded Deathclaw is a pansy if you utilize this simple tactic. Really, the biggest threat and sense of tension in Fallout 76 is the very real fact that you can no longer pause when you go into a menu. If you're not too concerned with the complexity, depth, or the core gameplay loop of a title and know that with your close friends you'd have a blast in a co-op Fallout game scrounging for loot regardless of its pitfalls and strengths, well then, go out there, shoot up some ghouls, and explore the lands of West Virginia. If, however, you're looking for a very solid title, be it for the great combat or the great story, you will be disappointed. Fallout 76 is sadly a title that launched with a lot of unfinished concepts Bethesda will take quite some time with to figure out. As it stands, it's very hard to recommend Fallout 76 at launch. Thank you for watching, my name is bDoDepthOfField, and I'll see you in the next video or stream.